Well, there was a quick loading spinny, and now there's no countdown. I apologize for that. It's my first time doing this, but Carlo is here to lead us in.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're live now. This I've got Ben Toth in Pest, Hungary. We've got Ian uh,
Kummer.
Kummer in Moscow, and Russia, and we have Regis Tremblay in Crimea. It's a Eastern European quorum today. So where do we want to begin, Ben?
Well, let's just get the public service announcements out of the way that Billy Bob is not with us.
Oh, right.
He's on assignment. That's why I was dabbling around of how to do this stream. I've never produced before. Apologies, but welcome to everybody watching us. Hopefully, I'll see your comments and put them on screen in time, the best I could say. And initially, our title was, I think, Two Chicks of the Same Arse, because the biggest story going around was Galloway. But in the last about hour, we had to rename it to Ding Dong, The Witch is Gone, which I think I'll leave to Carlo.
Right. Victoria Nuland has announced her retirement. She's going to resign from the Biden administration. I don't see anyone crying over that. She was a vicious imperialist murderer by any stretch of the imagination. We've had off camera, we had varied opinions about why she's resigning at the point. Obviously, Ukraine is lost, and that was on her watch. She was right there in 2014 when the Maidan coup occurred. She was caught on her phone conversations were caught
with Jeffrey Pyatt.
Yep. Yeah, and she obviously was instrumental in putting Zelensky in power. My personal feeling is that the uncommitted vote, 100,000 votes in Michigan, was spoke loudly to the Biden administration, which are just a bunch of political animals. And I would stress the word animals here. And even though Michigan has one of the largest Arab populations in the United States, still 100,000 voices had to make it pretty clear that if the situation in Hamas dragged on through the election, that Biden was not going to win. There was no way he was going to win. That's my 2 cents. Anybody else want to pick it up?
Chances of that are increasing. I'll do a little bit of speculation, which I got from DD Geopolitics, previously Dombash Devuska Sarah, amazing girl. And apparently it's kind of hush-hush, but there might be an investigation coming up in the next couple of weeks. The statement from Antony Blinken said in the coming weeks she will resign from her post. Interestingly, nothing given, just the praise of her previous work. But that investigation is going to go into the billions that went into Ukraine before 2014, basically the prep for Maidan, where I think there's video of Force saying we invested 5 billion or something like that. It might be 10 billion. And in the US, I think that's the biggest sin you can commit. An investment with no returns might be the thing that caught up with her, but she'll probably live in a farm, removed from politics. What do the Easterners think about? I mean, one thing we can all agree on, and I've seen it on social media, is huge celebration that the witch is gone. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that is, if there is, I mean, assuming, and it's all rumors at this point, but if we assume the rumor is true that there is an investigation, I think it would be sensible to, and this is very common in Washington. If you've committed, a dozen crimes, they'll pick, the most innocuous one and ignore. I mean, that's what they did with Hunter Biden. That's what they do. People generally say, oh, well, you did this bad thing. So I think, in comparison to what happened in 2022 onwards, the corruption in 2014 is just, a fraction of it.
True. Yeah, it's the innocuous things.
So if you're going to take her down for something, it is probably just as a political decision to pick some mishandling of funds in 2014 rather than, the elephant in the room, just the billions that went missing in the war profiteering that happened February 2022 onwards.
Probably. And Regis, I'll hand it over to you, but let's not forget that she was on one of her unannounced visits during the whole reshuffle when Sierski got into the front, replacing Zaluzhny. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the resignation caught me by surprise. There's a big headline today in Russian media that I was reading. Details to follow, but I immediately thought, well, the timing of this. There's not a lot of time left. 9 months, 10 months in the Biden administration. As Carlo pointed out, that primary election, the Democratic primary in Michigan, was I think a knockout blow to Joe Biden. Michigan, such an important state with a large Muslim population as well. And now you see Newland resigning. I don't think she was fired. I think that would be such a black eye for Blinken, for Biden to fire this woman, unless they're looking for people to throw under the bus. That was the only thing that I could think of. It's been rumored that they're going to throw Zelensky under the bus. And when I start thinking about the stuff that I've read in just the last couple of days, Vitaly Klitschko, the former heavyweight boxing champion of the world, came out again in public, and he said that Zelensky firing Zaluzhny was a huge mistake because he was so popular, the most popular one.
Yeah. By the way, that was in Europe. It's La Repubblica, a big Italian circulated magazine. So it was amplified, not a little Ukrainian headline. Go.
Well, and also to remind everybody, last year it was Klitschko that accused Zelensky of being authoritarian for a whole list of reasons. And so when I look at that, and then I look across the sea to Washington, D.C., the Congress looks like they're not going to send money. The Europeans are saying, we're not going to give you any gifts anymore. You're going to have to pay for it.
Yep.
To me, I think Ukraine, this is going to lead to their exit ramp. I think they'll focus on trying to save the Biden administration, trying to save face. And of course, the military is already focused on China. So I think that Ukraine is a lost cause. It's a matter of time before it really becomes known to everybody. And I think from the Russian perspective, they've been very wise to wait this out because they knew what was coming. And Russia will be able to declare a total victory. There won't be any peace talks. It's just going to be exit and surrender. It's my thoughts.
It's interesting. Well, of course, Victoria Nuland in that famous phone call, she called Klitschko Klitsch. We don't want Klitsch. No.
Yahtzee's our guy.
Yeah, we got to have somebody else. But what's interesting also is that this situation in Gaza has rebounded and reverbed on the situation in Ukraine, and because that's what woke up, as Regis points out, the Islamic community in Michigan, which is an important swing state for Biden. And so we have a situation where the way the administration has led the slaughter. Let's be frank about this. Led the slaughter in Gaza, has rebounded, and Nuland is out because of that. Ukraine's demise is precipitous because of that. Because people in Congress are aware that supporting Gaza for them now is untenable to a certain degree with the electorate, and not with their usual rivals, but with people that used to support them. Now they're not going to support them if they come out strongly for arming Israel and maintaining this slaughter, this just absolute brutality in Gaza. Anyway.
I'm with you, and I think we can head on to Gaza in a short time, but I want to stick with this topic for just a second. By the way,
sure.
Demonic trash is a really good description for people say different things.
Trash, yes.
Yeah. The replacement, I've forgot the name, somebody called Bass, I think this was in the state.gov release, was an apparent China hawk, which lends credence to Regis's theory. And also he was in charge of the evacuation from Kabul from Afghanistan. So he's a retreat bot. So I think you could be spot on the money there. And when you talk about the instability surrounding the Kiev regime or things in Ukraine, not just the battlefronts, which are looking brutal, like horrific for the Ukrainian side. But yeah, Klitschko is one of them. The other is Poroshenko, the Chocolate Kings Party. It's named like dystopian, like Europe sovereignty or something. Europe, I don't know what. They're also complaining to the EU about the authoritarianism and the totalitarianism they are experiencing under Zelensky. So things are boiling under his feet. And it doesn't help that Sirski, when Victoria was there, he appointed the new, the commander of the whole armed forces, has started the blame game, replacing commanders, blaming them for the losses in Avdiivka. I think we're at 3 or 4 M1 Abrams tanks now. 2 of these breach vehicles that were tried to use to tractor them out also got shot up, and there's an active hunt for air defenses. The whole thing is just going down in flames, and the voices everywhere are sensing panic. And I want to draw your attention to this one guy, Stephen Bryan, like former something under Deputy Secretary of Defense. He writes for Asia Times, and he did 2 articles. One of them was the Zelensky's at a bind over how to draft more troops as the Russian forces advanced. And one part, the article that was picked up, we are at 32,000 official deaths in Ukraine, according to Zelensky. But according to this article, 700 mobilized troops, when we don't know where they are, we don't know what they're doing. And this was no name, but it was interviewed people in the power structure under Zelensky. That's what this interview does. It is 700,000 people. It's just unknown where they are. I wonder if I could get your thoughts on that. And the second Stephen Bryan article, which talked about, this is the title: Nazi Rescue of Mussolini, a US model for Zelensky. Stephen Bryan. That is the title of the Asia Times article, and it talks one thing about the US might have this plan to get him out, maybe to Lvov, maybe to somewhere to the rest if things get too hot. And also there was a big admission in there, like Macron, who urged to put troops on the ground. That apparently that came from the US side. It was considered for weeks and was recommended by the US side, and then it's instantly Karine Jean-Pierre, Biden, everybody said, "Oh no, you're crazy, son." But before that, it was just like egging them on, going, more European meat to the grinder, where the 700,000, we just don't know where they are. So what do you guys think about these 2? He's big, like national security guy. I can't hear you, Ian. Go on.
Sorry, my microphone switched off. But so there's been comments from people I've been reading that, that's the Ukrainian war effort is very amateurish, right? The press get, it's not a model of efficiency, just snatching people off the streets and just sending them to the front. So it's entirely possible that, and there's 700,000 unaccounted for, because I saw that Washington Post article you referred to. I mean, doesn't mean they're all dead or they're all deserted. It's not necessarily a catastrophe like that, or that they were never recruited to begin with. It could just be that they just very bad. It's terrible record keeping.
Oh, and let's not forget, it's the most corrupt land in the world. So obviously,
so
the deputies, everybody needs those payments. Yeah, that's a part of it.
Yeah, so when Sirski walked into this mess, and 2 years into a large scale war like this, and it's just like, it's almost too late to even start reforming it. If the problem is that severe.
That's true. I mean, the CNN headline, one of the articles was that this is painting a dark mood in the West. The defeats in Avdiivka, it's a dark mood in the West. And there was a very interesting other article about the defenses, which apparently also were never built. This was on the New York Times.
Right.
And the surprisingly weak Ukrainian defenses help Russia's advance. Only sparse, rudimentary defensive lines, like, not the ones that... oh shit, I forgot the Russian guy who created that, the Surovikin line, the famous one, and it looks like they're just cutting through like a hot knife through butter. So no wonder there's a panic.
Yeah. My comment, to pick up on what Carlos said, the blowback from what the United States and NATO and the EU have been doing in Ukraine has been minimal. This Israeli genocide on Palestine has awakened the entire world.
Yeah.
And I have been talking to some of my friends in the United States from one coast to the other. I've been asking them, so what is going on in terms of protest? And they're telling me they're happening everywhere.
Europe hasn't stopped. Yeah.
Europe hasn't stopped. But my friends have been telling me across the United States, people are rising up, and Biden is under tremendous pressure because people now realize he has done nothing except send more billions of dollars in money and weapons to kill people in Palestine. And he comes out and says, well, we're going to send them food.
Yeah.
And then he's pictured eating an ice cream cone again. I mean, I think the way Biden is being portrayed now to millions of Americans and his administration is now becoming clear. That's what my take is from my friends that I've been talking to back in the States. And I think this is ominous. I get the feeling that some major changes are going to happen. And I'm not just talking about the coming election. I'm talking about what's happening geopolitically because of this instability.
Completely on the money. But since I have the two Russian located guests on this, I really need to take your opinion on something, because there's been increasing headlines about the one other thing that Joe Biden and his idiots achieved was it looks like complete divorce of Israel and Russia, more and more forcefully. It looks like Israel said, you are just like Hamas, Russia, and we're going to send early drone detection systems to Kiev. And you know what? Well, fuck. Okay, none of that language. But it really seems, and if I look at some Russian Telegram and opinion, social media, like there's no trace of the old special relationship left, even though there's 1 to 2 million Russians in Israel. It's lost. It's like, no, these are criminals. This is a genocide, and there's no force, nothing on this earth that can allow this to happen. What's your impression among the Russians you guys speak to?
I'd say the large majority supports Palestine, or even if they don't directly support Palestine or feel neutral on it, it is a genocide. It does invoke images of Leningrad, of just calculated, literally calculating the calorie intake of each.
They've seen this exactly. Their granddads. It lives in the memory. Yeah.
So and Israel, I think, went out of their way to burn bridges with Russia, because Israel could have, taken care of their business, and we could dispute the way they did it. But, they went out of their way to condemn Russia and to compare it to Hamas and to send increased aid to Ukraine. They didn't have to do that. So that was a choice. That's not
interesting. In Europe, in the headlines, everything is Russian disinformation, and in Israel, everything is Hamas, which now includes Russia. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I would agree with Ian. And the only thing I would add to that is Russia has millions and millions of Jews in this population. and they have had for centuries probably.
Very important point.
And I think that that is the reason why Russia has had this friendly relationship with Israel, tolerating a lot of what's going on there. But as Ian mentioned, Israel coming out and condemning Russia publicly, Israel sending weapons and stuff to Ukraine, Russia looking at this and saying we can no longer support this. Putin basically has said that we cannot support the genocide of a people anywhere. It's our moral responsibility, is what he said, to defend them. Now, the question for me is, when does talk meet the road?
Yeah.
It's one thing to say something, but it's another thing to follow up and do something. And I don't see that happening anywhere in the world, except perhaps the Houthis in Yemen and public support from around the world. And the one thing they can do is to boycott all companies that support and operate in Israel and boycott everything that Israel exports. That is happening. But I don't see the Arab and Muslim world coming together to defend their brothers and sisters in Palestine when this genocide is happening. Those are my thoughts.
I'm with you. Yeah,
Well-
it's really shameful. Go ahead, Carlo.
I've got four things in my head. I just wanted to say that Hezbollah too, they did fire 80 rockets into the Golan Heights recently. At least I saw reports of that. 60 of which struck targets and were kind of a shock to the settlers and the Israeli settlers in the Golan Heights. Secondly, Russia's ties to Israel also have a lot to do with Russia's very generous emigration program of Jews to Israel to form part of the Ashkenazi. The third point I wanted to make was, maybe our viewers know this, but I had to laugh about the Nazi Mussolini escape option because if you don't know this, folks, Mussolini was dragged out of his palace, him and his wife, and they were hanged from lampposts, eviscerated, and set on fire. So if that's the Nazi escape plan that the U.S. wants to follow for Zelensky, I have no problem with that, actually. The fourth thing I wanted to mention,
by the way,
is the real parallel. Well, we're going to get demonetized. We don't take any.
We don't make money, guys. We don't.
None whatsoever. We don't even ask for subscribers. The fourth thing I wanted to point out, and probably the most important and the most sophisticated, is the parallel between Ukraine and Gaza. Now, and I would see Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine, as the Israelis when they attacked the Donbass in beginning of 2014, shelling the people in Donbass, Texas. I can't remember the guy's last name.
Bentley, Russ Bentley, yes.
He was in his home broadcasting, and you could hear the shells going off all around his house. So it was the Ukrainian government attacking their own citizens in the Donbass. And that's the parallel. It's Israel and Ukraine are the same. They're attacking their own citizens in an attempt to, well, let's use the word genocide them, because 14,000 people did die in the Donbass. They weren't all civilians, but a great number of them were civilians. And the difference is Russia stepped in to the Donbass because they have security issues. They had serious security issues with Ukraine.
Well, they wanted nukes. Zelensky openly said it at the Munich Security Conference early 2022. I want nukes. I want to be part of NATO. And nobody said you can't do that. That was the point. Yeah.
But Russia's not stepping in Gaza because they don't see an imminent national security interest. But they did step in Ukraine. You don't see the United States stepping into Gaza, do you? No.
No, just sending more bombs, but a couple of parcels of aid as well. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck them.
So ridiculous. Like someone said, it's like 5 truckloads. That's all they dropped. And people who are starving. This is another point I wanted to make. Billy Bob, local, I guess, hard Stalinist, but sort of like me, is not here. Stalin's grave today at the Kremlin has already a couple of thousands of red carnations on it. And back when they liberated Auschwitz, right? That was the Red Army guys. It wasn't the West. They didn't know what was going on. And when they saw these human skeletons, like really, thin people there. I mean, this is from Mr. Dushman, but I forgot his name. The guy who led the siege with his tank. He said, we dropped all our food and we went to hunt Nazis because we were so unprepared for what we saw. The difference is 2 things. One, numbers, 10,000 kids dead, right? 30,000, 10,000 kids, I think 15,000 I don't know where the actual tally is in Gaza, and nothing like that on the Ukrainian side, even though for 9 years they were, as Carlo mentioned, shelled relentlessly, right? And there was the Alley of Angels, the little kids on the playgrounds put out little toys, but according to the collective Zapad, this never happened. It all began unprovoked invasion, February 24, 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to.
I was just going to say, you can see these same skeletons now. Unfortunately, if you look at social media, that the Russians were shocked to see, and now the whole thing is on every smartphone in the world. Big difference. Go ahead, Regis.
Yeah, I've been to the Donbass, to Donetsk and Lugansk twice, a total of a month. I interviewed a lot of people. I saw the devastation to civilian infrastructure. Schools, hospitals, public buildings, transportation, and I saw mass graves. And the number that people were using for a long time was 20 to 26 million have been killed or wounded. Now, the number they're throwing around now is 14,000, not million, 14,000. You mentioned Bentley, Russell Bentley, the Donbass cowboy, Texas. I interviewed him. I made a movie about his life, the Donbass cowboy. I've been to his house. I've been to the neighborhood right on the front line that's been shelled, and at that time on a daily basis. These are people, simple pensioners, people who worked in the mines, getting killed, their houses blown apart. And I documented all of this in video. And the thing that really irritates me, and this is a difference between Donbass and Gaza, the rest of the world did not see this devastation. The rest of the world did not rise up against this. There was complete silence. So that's a difference. But the other parallel, in my mind, between Ukraine and Israel is the open and direct funding of billions of dollars to both Israel and the Kiev regime.
Year after year.
The handprint of the United States is clearly on display now for everybody to see. And we started out talking about Victoria Nuland. Ben mentioned that, very famous on television. We have dedicated $5 billion to this effort to create democracy and freedom in Ukraine. Ben says it might be 10 billion. Well, it's been over 100 billion that the United States has invested in that now in the last 10 years. And so I'm just pleased that I think the rest of the world is waking up. People like us and others are connecting both of these genocides, and that's what they are. So those are my thoughts. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys as always.
You're eloquent as always, like George Galloway. Go ahead, Ian. You had some thoughts.
Well, it's true. I mean, I think it's true. The less publicity, what happened in Donbass got much less publicity than Gaza, but at the end of the day, it's not publicity that saved them from genocide. It's the fact that, like you all said, Russia actually intervened on their behalf. So far, no one has done that for Gaza.
Yeah.
Do you guys, the Russian committee here, do you know the song Donbass za nami? Donbass behind me is Nami Bog and God is with us. It's a patriotic song. It was made in 2022. And one of the parts of it, like, everybody turned their face away. The icons were crying. The children were dying. Everybody turned away, but not my land, but not my undefeated land. Do you know how proud people must have been who actually followed this horrific shit for 9 years, including, the Communist Party, the KPRF, and all those people to finally do something and defy the West? And that's all it took to bring slowly this house of cards just tumbling down. Do you guys know this song?
I do not, unfortunately. But I do think there was jubilation when Russia actually when the State Duma recognized their independence, which was a first, and that was the first big step that Russia was going to do something. When I don't remember the exact day that happened. It happened a couple days before the special military operation started. Because up to that point, Luhansk and Donetsk were even by Russia were recognized as just oblasts in Ukraine.
Unrecognized, like Transnistria today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was a huge shift. We also have to remember too, it wasn't even whether or not it was provoked. It was the fact that Ukraine moved 120,000 troops right up to the border, increased shelling exponentially.
The OSCE documented it at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, my thoughts, when people try to say that Russia was not provoked, that Russia illegally invaded the Ukraine, I have written articles, lengthy articles, and I've made videos that, in my opinion, this war in Ukraine did not begin in 2014. This war is not a proxy war. I refuse to use the word proxy. It's a direct war between the United States using its vassals in all of NATO on the playground, the soccer pitch of Ukraine. When you look at all the billions of dollars that have been dumped in there, American forces have been in there. It's documented. Canadian forces have been in there. French troops and they are in there now. But my argument is it didn't begin then. It began in 1945.
Yeah.
This war to defeat and dismantle, at the time, the Soviet Union. It's very well documented. I've documented, and I have documents that I'm willing to share with anybody if they ask. And from 1945 through the fall of the Soviet Union, the United States alone has continued the threats and the acts of aggression against Russia, the Russian Federation. The United States and NATO have been conducting massive annual war games. Steadfast Defender is the name of this one. 90,000 troops, thousands of tanks, airplanes, ships, all along Russia's border, including in the Arctic. And so when people look at this today and they say, well, this is just Ukrainian conflict. No, it's the American attempt, and it's publicly stated American foreign policy document to destabilize, to take down Putin, and to balkanize Russia. This is in print in the United States. People don't realize this. So to say Russia was not provoked, I say to people, if you were alive in 1962 in October, do you remember the American reaction when the Soviets put missiles in Cuba? Jesus, we were terrified. Everybody was terrified. We thought it was going to be the end of the world. And the danger now okay, that we are in is of a nuclear Armageddon,
Yes.
if not by design, some strange love pushing the button by accident. And in 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, America went ballistic. Thank God Kennedy and Khrushchev could talk. But I would say this today: if Russia, forget the Soviet Union, communism, and that ideology to take over the world, that's not Russia. But if Russia put bases in Canada, in Mexico, in the Caribbean, the United States would go ballistic. End of argument.
That's what I
Yeah.
believed in the 1990s, that communism is gone, the Soviet Union was gone. Very sad for my part of the world, Eastern Europe. But now they're going to be part. I think the Russians believed it too. They're going to be part of this European family. We're going to get along, and they were taken for a ride. I also want to say hi to Paulie. And since we're talking about this, I wonder if anybody's seen that. Well, actually, I think Carlo had something to say before this.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say. I wanted to mention that Fleur Me, who had a comment earlier, she kind of followed up on or led what Regis pointed out, is how do you get the general public to accept this? First, I want to mention something about the Cuban Missile Crisis, that it's not a secret anymore, but it was a quid pro quo which got the missiles out of Cuba. At the time, it looked like, oh, Kennedy's a great hero. He forced the Russians to take the missiles out of Cuba. Well, actually, Kennedy and the United States agreed to take their missiles out of Turkey.
Yes.
As a quid pro quo. I just want to mention that because some people don't know that. And even though it's like, I see it repeated on the History Channel all the time with that footage they had. They have documentary footage and all that stuff. But anyway, I also wanted to say the point that Fleur Me made and Regis also made was, how do you get the public to Fleur Me was talking about the social comments and how far people had to go. That they still think Ukraine, Russia invaded Ukraine willy-nilly. There was no coup in 2014. There was no shelling of the Donbass. There was no threat to national security. And now we have the 12 CIA bases along the border, which could be another reason.
That was a big leak.
That Russia thought maybe this is time to go in. People, they're idiots. I mean, I'm sorry to do this, but I read a lot of. Sometimes I rush through the articles to get to the comments, and I know it's going to be painful. But speaking for the American people at large, they're idiots. They're ninnies. They don't know what the fuck that's going on. Both MAGA and Russiagate assholes. They just don't get it. They're slaves to the corporate media. They're not interested in anything. I wish I could get around more. You could take a microphone and a recorder and ask people the simplest question, like, who's the president of Ukraine now? And they won't know. Or, they'll get the name wrong, or they'll know that they might know Zelensky. Maybe 30%, 40% will know. So they're not engaged at all. So programs like us are programs that are far more popular, like whenever Scott Ritter's on or Doug McGregor's on, anybody like that. It's even though the numbers are big, the vast majority of people are not engaged. And if you don't get them engaged, nothing's going to happen.
I want to comment on that if I can.
Sure.
Yeah, that's why I left it up. Go ahead.
I would not be as harsh as you, Carlo, in calling them names, but I know you're going to agree with me. What has happened, and I describe it now, is that all of us Americans have been hardwired here in the brain You can call it propaganda, but it goes back to our education, going back not just decades, but a couple hundred years. We were taught formally and informally that we were the exceptional nation. We were spreading freedom and democracy around the world. We were a force for good. And this has been hardwired. We heard it in church. We saw it in civic celebrations. We saw it on the 4th of July, on Memorial Day. And what I believe is, it's easy to say that Americans were believing propaganda and they're stupid and it's their media. It's been our entire society that has created this mindset, which I believe, from my experience, is impossible for most to break out of, because to break out of it destroys who they are, who they see themselves as individuals, and how they see their country. And I believe that is just too much of a difficult task for most Americans to do. It's obvious that the four of us and millions of others have had an epiphany, have broken out of it. And for many of us, it's been a very traumatic and difficult journey. But that is what I believe has happened to people. I can't speak about Europe, but I can speak about the United States. I cannot blame them. As much as I would like to say how blind they are, I cannot blame them, because I understand the image that has been hardwired into every American forever.
Well, go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, if anybody remembers, because the previous comment was about ducking and cover because the nukes are coming, the Cold War era, which I think at least you two guys went through. I wonder if you remember that Sting song, I Hope the Russians Love Their Children, to an absolute terror song. I learned that in the 90s when, the wall fell and we connected with the other side, but we were absolutely terrified. And the false, Andrei Martyanov makes this point a lot, that not just military history, but proper history is not taught in the US. You were told not only that the US won the standoff in the missile crisis in Cuba, but it also won the Cold War because they basically, we outspent those Soviets and dragged them into the trap in Afghanistan. I think that's Brzezinski. And I wanted to ask you, this was a previous kind of thought, anybody seen the new Dune movie? Because originally that was about we're gonna get rid of Khrushchev, the Berbers, the Islamic people are gonna get rid of Khrushchev. That was the basic undertone of the movie, in Afghanistan. And now it's about sort of decolonization, de-imperialization, and all that stuff, which I have seen in the latest EU Parliament's sanctions in the name of Navalny. And it says that we need a win in Ukraine in order to decolonize, de-imperialize, and refederate Russia. Some have these stupid dreams, but others. Borrell made this quote a week ago, and today to the ambassadors in Hungary, Orban made it again, that guys, the era of Western dominance is over. Multipolarity is here to stay, and we should pay attention and analyze the situation day by day, because we're not ever going back. And that, to sort of round it up, is what happened in combination with, Hamas in Gaza and the Russian Federation's armed forces. And just a couple of points. They still have these PR wins, the Zelensky side. They sank another patrol boat the other day in your region, right? Somewhere in Crimea, Regis. Do you know about this?
Yes, I saw that in the news. Yes.
Yeah, I saw the video. So I haven't seen it on TASS or the Ministry of Defense yet. But okay, they did that. Like maybe 12 of these seaborne drones got hit. What's that going to change? There's nothing else. But it's just, give me a little bit more money. Give me a few people. Give me anything that you can from the West, and all of it's dried up. I mean, the German leak, we all heard about this. The Russians that intercepted the three German generals talking. What was not really put in the mainstream, but I found it odd that it was the lack of munitions. Storm Shadow and Scalp, the British and French cruise missiles, were basically out. So we really need these Tauruses, because maybe 10 could take out the Crimea Bridge, which again, why? It's like somebody's got an Ahab syndrome, with I have to get Moby Dick. I don't know what's the goal other than PR in getting that goddamn bridge. And then we have maybe 50, we can send in a tranche, and we have another 50 and we're out. And that's what's happened to Europe, guys. The French media is talking about there's a gunpowder shortage, unfortunately, because we need a special kind of cotton that China used to supply. But then, for some reason, a couple of months ago, they stopped supplying it. Well, that reason was the US did this whole forced labor in Xinjiang. This isn't confirmed in the article, but I'm virtually certain that's what happened. The US cucked you again. So you can't make ammunition. And what's beautiful about this is like all the 32 countries in NATO, they were demilitarized by the Russian Federation. And if that's not something other than Nuland's resignation to be celebrated, I don't know what is. But you're right on the caution side, Regis, that the nuclear war aspect, since they've done the salami tactic, like we've crossed this red line, that red line, they won't mind if we cross another one. That's dangerous. On to you, Ian. Sorry.
No, you're good. But on that note, though, it's interesting how you remember the Russians have to cannibalize washing machines for chips. They have to do all that, and now Russia doesn't have to. I remember that was all over the news for a long time.
In
Russia
tatters,
doesn't have
I tell
enough
you.
ball bearings, not enough ball bearings. That 18th century, ball bearing that's existed for 250 years or longer. They don't have enough of those, and now it's
at the same time they're a threat to U.S. satellites.
Yes, at the same time, but also then it's not Russia; it's Europe that's running out of basic things like not enough glass, not enough steel, not enough gunpowder. It's kind of, it was projection this whole time. It was them who were dependent on imports, not Russia.
And now, good luck. Your import dependence on the US, which I think they'll discover very fast. They already have. Is a far less reliable partner.
Well, Biden already cut the LNG, or not cut, but
the exports
froze more export contracts for Texas, and it's just like, well, that's kind of funny that they say, Putin's weaponizing energy, so get. I remember like Ben Hodges said this, just one more year of pain and then you're free from Russian energy dependence. And then right after that, Biden's like, oh, just kidding. We're cutting LNG exports.
Yeah, Ben's not an American, thank God.
Yeah, I didn't. I wanted it for a second. Sorry about that.
It really is good to have Ben and other non-Americans on the show, because they provide a different perspective. And people will automatically think, well, Americans are always going to have this perspective. But Ben provides this alternative view. Ben, you've been so meticulous in your research,
right,
on a daily basis, and you've been so articulate. And I hope that all of the viewers here appreciate that. I know that Ben has been a guest on my show several times. He's very popular, provides that different view that Americans just don't get.
End of show. Goodbye. See you on Friday. No, I'm joking, but thank you very much. I feel that.
Yeah, I like to add. Ben provides us every week with what we call the cheat sheet, and it's ran 14 pages, 15 pages recently. And I think this one was 11 pages. So we get a detailed report on what's happening all around the world, organized in a way that we can get prompted to go and do further research on the subject. So he's invaluable to the program. I want to say that on air, and talk about articulate.
Billy Bob said, "Have a good show, but not too good." You're going to make him jealous now. But
the last thing he said, there's a great deal to unpack there, and I have no further comment on that. So, where do we go now? We want to go to.
I think we can end where we sort of began, if you guys agree. Like our original title was Two Cheeks of the Same Arse, and I absolutely want to celebrate Mr. George Galloway, MP for Rochdale, the by-election, which he took by storm. So bad, as in for the establishment in Britain, so bad that little Rishi Sunak had to rush out and do an emergency statement like, we're in real trouble, there's extremism, far left, far right, and it's all tied to Mr. George Galloway, who's seen like thousands of people join his Workers' Party organization ever since then. And he is such a delight. He is teaching for correspondence, these unbearable Sky and BBC people an absolute lesson of adverse journalism or adverse subject to journalism. It's wonderful to see. And I do believe that's part of the process. I think Paulie or someone else said that this waking up, like ripping your eyes open, is going to speed up now. I think that Nuland was a huge sea change. I think the elections in the United States were a huge sea change. And part and parcel of that same process, I think, is Mr. George Galloway, the Lion. What do you guys think about his appearances and day so far?
Well,
I was glad that he didn't blame it all on Putin.
Yeah, Europe is used to that. Yeah.
I love the way he called out labor too.
Yeah.
It's time, man. It's time to go back to a real labor party. It's time to sing the Yarrow song. It's time to get back and support the miners, and that's in a real way. And Rochdale pointed that out to everybody, including labor. You better step up now and not be a bunch of toadies to great.
I wondered. I watched that. I watched one of those interviews he did with that guy from Sky News or whatever, and he just destroyed this guy. But the thing that I thought was, are they going to do the same thing to him that they do to anybody else that steps out of line? The opposition is still powerful.
Yeah.
And, this was the first thought that came to my mind. When you hear a firebrand like Galloway, who's so articulate. He speaks as former diplomats used to speak.
Yeah.
Incredible intellect. And people are relating to him. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, he won this election in his area overwhelmingly, but I really worry about the forces, the powerful forces behind all of it, that are behind the curtain. We haven't talked about tonight, but it's those forces that really are controlling what's happening globally. I worry the same thing about Robert F. Kennedy in the United States. If he ever gains any traction and gets into the debates, you talk about Trump supposedly going against the mainstream. Trump is one of them. But
RFK Jr.
Robert F. Kennedy is not, and he may suffer the same fate as his father and his uncle.
Well, except if it's on Israel, because then every presidential candidate is equally, kind of sycophantic about it. Ian, you had something to say?
No.
Galloway,
sorry.
Galloway reminds me a little bit of Claire Daly and Mick Wallace in the Irish.
By the way, Irish Supreme Court, I think, or something high level, they were the ones who passed absolute sanctions on Israel. It's not just Claire Daly and Mick Wallace who are the heroes of the European Parliament.
I think them getting up and pounding away every day on Ukraine and Gaza has had an effect on the general population of Ireland. It's small, we're relatively small, but it can happen in a smaller country like that, much smaller than the U.S. But I really think they've had an impact. The Irish people were put upon, by the English for so many.
First colony of England, yeah.
Yeah, they were just, they know what it feels like to be Gaza. They, in their history, it's in there, and I think Claire Daly and Mick Wallace pounding away every day, they know what it feels like to be in the Donbass. So playing on that, or not playing on it, but just naturally bringing that about has made the change. Now, here in the United States, I hate Trump. I think he's a piece of shit. But obviously, there are powerful forces going against him.
Yeah.
It's like it's not all Trump bad, sort of thing. There are people that want him out of the way, and it serves he serves as an example of what can be done. Now, what's ironic about it is it's likely he's going to be elected because of the stupidity and voracious warmongering of the liberal party, the Democrats, because they're following this kind of blind ideology that we've been talking about. That supposedly has been ingrained into the American ninny, if you will, because and what's interesting to me about it is that the difference between delusion and fact. These people are both. You talk about the MAGA people or the what are the conspiratorial, the conspiratorial groups. Everybody, pretty much everybody in the U.S. has a delusional view of what's going on, purely delusional. When, as Chomsky points out, when all the facts are right there for them to read, if they want to read them, experience them. So I do blame the people. It's like everything is there. You have the National Security Archives. You have open archives everywhere. It's all available to you. And you have the alternative press, alternative newspapers when I was coming up, and all this stuff, and they don't avail themselves of any of it. They're to blame. The American people are to blame themselves for what has made them is in the process of making them a second-class country, third-class country, because they're third-class people. They're third-class people. They're not aware. You don't get. I don't have any faith in the American people. I'm right here with them.
Ninny alert! I love your explosion.
One more thing, Mr. Doherty, Doug, he said any revolutionary would not abandon the people, and I told him back, hey, they've abandoned me. I'm out here all alone. I don't have any family that'll talk to me. I don't have any friends that'll talk to me. I don't have any literary associates, which used to be my community. They won't talk to me over Ukraine because they're ninnies about Ukraine. I tell this story over and over again about my being on a poetry thing with 7 other people, and the moderator, and they got Zoom bombed, and they were mentioning my name as somebody, and they're making lewd comments and all that stuff. So it got into a thing about why were they doing that. I said it's because of my position on Ukraine, and then I said 27 million Russians died fighting the Nazis in World War II. The moderator looks right into the camera and goes, oh, Carlo, how could you say such a thing? That's stupid. That's ninnyhood. That's dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, even though
I'm loud because I want to wake them up. They're stupid. They're idiots. I'm sorry.
I've given up. I've given up. We keep trying. I haven't given up trying, but I've given up really trying to be in their face and to try to show them the truth and the facts. But they just turn away in spite of the fact, Carlos, as you said, it's all there in their own country, public, not classified anymore. It's there. But as I mentioned before, they will turn away immediately rather than deal with it. The one thing I wanted to say, which I think is relevant, you brought it up, Carlos, Trump. I don't vote. I haven't voted in an American election in a long time. It's not an election, it's a selection. But I did admire Trump when he went to Helsinki and he met with Putin. And they met for several hours. They both came out and they gave a press conference. Everything was hopeful, hunky-dory. We're going to work together. Boom, 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 boom. Trump didn't even get back on his plane to return to America. and he was being crucified by his own party, by the media. He's Putin's poodle. John McCain, Lindsey Graham, the whole bunch of them crucified him. And within a couple of days, somebody got to Trump, there's no doubt. 180-degree turn against everything he had said publicly with Putin. I have the video. Many of you have that video. And so what this indicates to me, and we've only alluded to it just briefly, there are powerful forces, extremely powerful forces that are behind everything and everybody that is on the global stage today.
Yeah, good.
And
Just
that
please don't name them, Regis, because that's the last time the show got yanked when we started naming some people.
No, I wasn't going to start naming them because I know the punishment that will follow. I suffer the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, about
What I find remarkable about the Americans is every past foreign policy, what they call blunder, you know, the Viagra thing, the weapons of mass destruction, all of that. They know, yeah, that was a lie. We were in the lie. But the current one, they just never can. And part of it is, you know, I love that Aaron Mate calls them blue MAGA, you know, blue no matter who, because they're just as cultish as some of the Republicans were. But you're right. And to add to your point, it was the same with the Middle East. Trump wanted to pull out the forces. And in a week, they got him to send cruise missiles. And that was him being presidential to show, look at this strong leadership. Yeah, I don't advocate for Trump because I'm a voter in America. I'm European. I like that he's a chaos bomb who might draw back the tentacles of the U.S. empire, at least from my part of the world. That's pretty much it on my end. Ian, I know you had something to say.
But, you know, as far as, you know, the average American voter, the average American citizen who has a job, who has kids, who has family, you know, the average person isn't going to do a deep dive into these topics because you just don't have the time or the energy to look into, you know, world geopolitics. And if you do deep dive into it, doesn't, you know, what's the typical person's starting points? You know, you're going to look at the news sites, you know, and they all say the same thing. So it's like, so if you're just doing surface level analysis of the information presented to you, it's going to be all fictitious. So, you know, the average person doesn't even, and like what Regis said earlier about, you know, how, you know, from birth we're given these stories, you know, you're not going to have any kind of starting point to begin to deconstruct the propaganda that's presented to you. You're not even going to have the energy or the time to be interested in it. And that's, I'd say, the biggest, unless there's a problem that's right on people's doorstep where, you know, it's actually making life unlivable, they're just not going to be interested enough to look into it. It's, you know, Ukraine, Gaza, it's all something that's happening far away. They look at the news presents a story, and they don't look into it any further. That's just the reality.
Can I go ahead, Carlo, and then I'm going to wrap it up with a bit of positivity.
I kind of agree with what Ian's saying. If this program couldn't exist, I agree maybe 40 years ago, because the way, you know, 40, 50 years ago, the way I cut my teeth was there was a bookstore called Common Concerns, and they had a large array of alternative magazines. Now, you know, you could go to Kramer Books, which was like the more conservative place, and then you had Foreign Affairs and all that. At Common Concerns, you had Covert Action Information Bulletin, you had The Nation at the time, you had Seeds, you had NACLA, and they were all far left magazines at the time. You could learn. Now we have the internet, and they're all available on the internet, and you can learn. There's about things. You can listen to Ritter. You can listen to Doug McGregor. Don't listen to him on immigration, because, you know, he reminds me of like 19th century immigration or early 20th century immigration, when my people, the Italians, came over, and they were considered dirty, swarthy. Get rid of them, you know. And we proved them wrong by forming mafia. The mafia. And so,
quick interjection to Carlo's major point. Yeah. Just catch Bloomberg, who did this headline: "Immigration rage drowns out the U.S. labor market's dire need for workers." for example. Hello,
Yeah.
that's the moneyed class talking to you. Anyway,
Yeah,
go
there
ahead.
we go. And who's going to work in a chicken processing plant, or who's going to pick the vegetables? Certainly not Americans. That's a true thing. So the immigrant, I kind of lost my train of thought. But anyway, I want to fault Trump's use of immigration and general politicians' use of immigration, because really this is the same kind of racist, xenophobic rhetoric that has always pervaded the United States. I mean, Native Americans, African Americans used as slaves. It's a cut of the same Irish indenture. Now, I would say that what happened to the Native Americans and and Africans was far worse than, say, what happened to an indentured servant, or what happened to my people, because we knew how to take care of ourselves, and if we weren't going to be able to play in the open marketplace, we just we like the Jews or the Irish, we just went and became an underground marketplace. The mafia, the police, mayoral positions in big cities, that sort of thing. Corrupt as the day is long, but we were just following the U.S. model. It was corrupt at the core. The Constitution of the United States is corrupt at the core. Uh, so, and I don't know where I was going with that.
No, but that's true. I just saw an SVR veteran, as in Russian intelligence veteran, share an open letter about exactly how corrupt the US system. It's never going to make it to the Western media at all, but it's been shared. So I want to sort of round it up on the big picture kind of positive statement and get final thoughts from everybody. I don't know what you think. You've been generous with your time again. On your point, by the way, Carlo is the guy who carried like this huge heavy camera around and got, these VCR things to actually get the journalism. He knows what he's talking. One of these old style guys. But the thing is, I want to emphasize, one is media is they're less trusted in the US now than Congress. And I don't know where it is, but it's below 10%. Everybody is abandoning them in droves. Like, as you said, there's alternatives. We're a tiny little bunch, but there's also, Rita Matyanov, all sorts. George Galloway's mother of all talk shows was more successful. It's huge. I think a huge part of his re-election as well. There's all sorts of places to get information. A lot of people like Regis, who has a VPN to access us, a lot of Europeans are getting VPN to access RT, to access Sputnik, to access TASS, to get the other side's perspective. And as I want to bring it back to Mr. Spanish Fab's comment, I don't either. But basically, that's the way it's always been. But there's another factor. When your salary gets bitten into, you have unexpected expenses, you can see your living standards just going down the drain, which is happening across Europe. The tractors never stopped. The Germans have now come to a halt because all the public transportation workers are on strike. Lots of things closing, and the same is in a miniature or a slower way happening in America. People start paying attention to, why the fuck is this happening when everybody's telling me Bidenomics is working? We have a look at the stocks. It's such a fantastic economy. And they feel, well, I have to pay 3 times as much for a dinner than I had 2 years ago. That's when it begins. And that is good news, that there's actually alternatives. So 2 things, alternative voices to be heard, even if you disagree with them. As I said, I'm a communist. I don't think our bottom 2 speakers are, but I'm very happy to talk with them. I'm happy to see the Russian and the other perspectives. As Regis said, it's all about getting more info. But if you don't have time with it, go to where you trust. Someone who's been honest and reliable. I think that's happening in a big way in the world. What do you guys think?
My final comment will be piggyback on what we've been talking about and what Ben just alluded to. There's another reason why people in the United States, even if they have begun to discover the truth, there's the fear of speaking out, the fear of being socially isolated, the fear of losing their jobs, This social isolation is powerful. I personally know people who will tell me privately, I believe everything you're saying, but if I were to say this in public, I'd lose my job, I'd lose all my friends. Most of us probably have lost friends, family, relatives
Thanks, Pete.
because of the positions we've taken. Social isolation is so powerful.
I just want to say, well, go ahead, Ian. I lost.
I want to respond to that, and then Ian's next, because quickly,
Yeah, sure.
well, they were used to be called the Eskimos, now they're called the Inuit. That was the biggest punishment they thought about, is we no longer see you. You are outside of the village. You can no longer, if you're there, we don't see you. That was the isolation. And a lot of people, yes. I mean, when Europe and US talks about cracking down on disinformation, they mean anybody who speaks something else, we're going to take your money, freeze your stuff, take your jobs, silence you. There's a lot of that going on, but I'm not sure we're losing. By the way, Ian, before you go, because I know you're in the Moscow region, I know you're a bit sort of old too, but did you perhaps go to the World Youth Festival? 20,000 people. I saw Polina Gagarina singing A Million Voices and everybody cheering along. It was just some of the
Yes, I saw the news. I did not attend, though. I didn't quite see myself in the target demographic for that.
Yes,
but,
sorry.
But
you're
no,
not as young as we are here.
Yes. I want to say my closing thoughts is that, I think what could really sink Biden in the upcoming election is Gaza, particularly. It's even more so than Ukraine, Gaza, because if you have a demoralized Democratic Party, which does have relies more on racial minority voters than Republicans, a lot of those, and younger voters than Republicans on average. And if they're just demoralized, so it's not even so. I mean, most people, switching parties is rare, but what could happen is a lot is that they're just demoralized. They're angry. They're demoralized. They stay home, and that might just be what sinks him in that election, especially in those 5 or 6 swing states that he needs.
Good point.
Well, all right. I had a.
Lead us out, Carlo. You let us in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to Regis and Ian. I'm losing my train of thought. So if you have something to say, Ben, say it. Maybe it'll come back to me.
I was just going to say thank you for all the commenters and the viewers who were here. And hopefully we should be back on Friday. And on March 15, Billy Bob should be back with us as well. But if that, Paulie, thank you for being here. One of the constants of our show. And one more chance, Carlo, whatever you want.
I maybe I'll come back to it, but I want to, that's right. This is what I wanted to say. One of our viewers, I can't remember his name now, said people come home and they sit down, they watch CNN. Well, I know in the United States, I get a lot of flack because, if I publish something, I might, a book or something, I might sell a few dozen copies or a couple of dozen copies. And people are always pointing out to me that, well, you can't be that good because nobody buys your books. Well, I'll tell you something. Watch Scott Ritter. Every show he's on, he outstrips CNN viewership by a huge margin. And both of them have worldwide distribution. They're all, so it's a level playing field, except that Scott is on YouTube, which is considered a minority, a more egalitarian, let's say, media. But he has far more viewers than any of the CNN programs. I mean, and watch George Galloway. He's tremendously entertaining. If you want to be entertained, he makes the CNN people look like you're watching, wallpaper or particle board or something. He's much more entertaining, and he has a huge audience. So, if you're going to sit down on your couch, don't tune in CNN and have them lie to you for 45 minutes or an hour. Don't tune in Fox and have them lie to you from their perspective, getting any facts. You're not getting any history. You're not getting anything you can use in your head. It's just, they're just trying to manipulate you. Go to the alternative people. Many of them. I mean, go to the gray zone. Go to covert action. Go, just go. I mean, if you're too lazy to read, there's all kinds of alternatives. Go to Douglas McGregor. He's great on Ukraine. Don't listen to him on immigration, but he's great on Ukraine, and he has a huge following. Go to Larry Johnson. Go to McGovern, whatever. I can't remember his first name off here. He's ex-CIA guy. What's that?
Douglas.
Yeah.
Ray
McGovern, right?
McGovern and Douglas. Yes,
But anyway, that's my plea. That's my plea to the people of America and the world. Go to these alternative people, and if you're too lazy, you can have your beer and you can sit down at your TV dinner and you can watch Scott Ritter and learn so much more and so get serious truth about what's going on. And you don't have to watch CNN. It's a brave new world, folks. You don't have to run down to the local bookstore, DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C. like I did and get the fucking journals every week. Come on, man. Step up, people.
I think and hope a lot of people are already doing that. But on that rare positive note for Carlo, thank you very much for being with us and see you on Friday. Take care. Bye.
Bye.